الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala the 20 points mentioned in the book of Tadhim Al-Ilm. Briefly, as mentioned before, not going through every single word of it, even though we should, just to get the benefit, so that we, in this week, covered many aspects of what's in the three books, mainly تذكرة السامع والمتكلم by Ibn Jama'ah rahimahullah, and some of the benefits from the book of Hilya Talib al-Ilm, and this book also, inshallah ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all benefit from it. And these adab and these manners are to be applied and to be observed. It's not just an advice that a person just listen to it and let it go, but rather that's why we need to record it. We need to make sure that we apply it, and it becomes a consistency to make sure that we're checking ourselves with regards to these adab that are being observed. That's why the subject of al-adab or manners, the children are taught to have manners or to have to adopt the issue of al-adab, even though they are not in the age of being mukallafin or being responsible for their actions, because it's something that needs for the person to get used to it. So it's not like, for example, a person would observe the adab in 1 day a week, and that's the end of it. No, this is a consistent thing. This is supposed to be the norm of the person. He keeps on being consistently applying the matters of al-adab till it becomes his norm. And the original status of the human being is they don't have it till they acquire it. So we don't have adab unless we learn it, whether from someone, our parents, for example, taught us, or when it comes to the adab of al-ilm, it comes from the people of knowledge, where a person learns the adab and the manners of seeking knowledge, and then he would find some struggle in himself. He forgets, he slips away. It's okay, as long as he's working on himself till it becomes the norm. We stopped at number 10 and then number 11. An important point that has been repeated throughout also the previous books. And it's a subject or a point that those who are away from the ilm or seeking knowledge, they're not aware of it. And they would even abuse this point, thinking of good intentions that they're doing something of goodness when it comes to spreading the ilm. And the subject is صيانة العلم. صيانة العلم عما يشين. To protect the ilm from what is shameful, or from what makes it against what the ilm is supposed to be. The ilm is the most valuable thing. It's the most respected thing. So you need to keep it like this, exalted, not to make it something that people would look down upon, something that people think that it's everybody's upon it, which is many people, they think that they're upon knowledge of the deen of Islam, even if they don't say that, but their actions might be a proof of this. They don't ask the people of knowledge. They don't humble themselves to learn the deen. They think they know what they're doing because this is the love of Allah that they have in their hearts, or sincerity, or this is how they've been raised. So part of the obligations upon the people of knowledge and upon those who study the deen of Allah, that they protect the ilm from anything that would degrade it, or something that would make people look down upon it, which is مما يخالف المروءة ويخرمها. Something that the person of knowledge should be away from, anything that goes against al-muru'ah and anything that breaks the muru'ah. And muru'ah is a subject that the early generations of Islam, they would talk about it. Even one of the things that Imma would not even take the hadith of others is if someone is not doing something according to the norms of al-muru'ah. And al-muru'ah, we can simply, maybe is not the most accurate word for it, but it's the nobility that a person would have in his actions and his conducting himself, that will protect him from anything that people would look down upon, something beyond what's halal and haram only. If something that is known to the people that this is disrespectful, he stays away from it. And this is, again, especially for those who are upon the ilm. And that issue also can be applied for those who are in special environments. For example, if a Muslim is looked very closely, people are focusing on his actions. He's the only Muslim in a place, in a company, in his work, whatever. So whatever he does is going to be attributed to the deen of Islam. That's wrong, and people should not do this, but this is what he sees as a reality. So what should he do? He should make sure that the deen is not looked down upon because of him. He does not become fitna for the people. So he would not do anything that is even looks as disrespectful or something that people look down upon people when they do it, even though regardless of the halal and the haram, of course, as long as it's not against the deen of Allah. So if something haram that people would think that whoever doesn't do it, it's disrespectful, no, he has to be firm and has to be away from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid and seek help from Allah. But this point is, as he mentions this principle, من لم يصن العلم لم يصنه العلم. It's the reward is given, or the punishment is given from the same sort of deed that a person do. If you don't protect the ilm won't protect you. You would not be upon the ilm unless you would honor the ilm and make sure that you don't put the ilm, or people would look down upon the ilm. And that's why when someone is studying the deen and he is looked to as a person of religion, as someone that is studying the deen of Allah, a person of knowledge, things like this, then he should be careful so that people do not make istighfaf of al-ilm. They look down at the people, look at the people of knowledge. They are nobody. The ilm is not that important in their life. So we have to exalt it in ourselves for people to see it. And that's why he mentioned a statement from Wahb ibn Munabbih, لا يكون البطال من الحكماء. The battal, he can never be from the hukama. Al-hukama are the wise ones. And the battal is the one that is, it's a word used for someone that is lousy, someone that is just involved in anything that doesn't, is not respectful. Idle talks, make fools of, fool of himself, loud voice, joking all the time, doing silly things all the time. So people would have no respect for him. And and this is one of the words, the subject of al-muru'ah, it takes time for people sometimes to comprehend it, especially if they are raised in an environment where there's no such a thing as what the muru'ah is. And that's why he mentioned something with regards to, or the definition of it, as mentioned here, استعمال ما يجمله ويزينه وتجنب ما يدنسه ويشينه. استعمال, to be upon what? Two things. يجمله, what beautify him and adorns him, and to stay away from what make him the opposite of that. يدنسه, like make him impure. ويشينه, make him ashamed of something, even the word yashin, shame, from the shame, like this. So something that is depend on the culture, depends on the norm of the people, of course, with ilm. That is to be done with ilm. Why? Because the ilm of the wahy, the revelation from Allah, would set the limits when it comes to halal and haram and recommended acts. And the norm of the Muslim is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. All of that is never to be changed. And then you add to it what the norm of the people of what's respectful and what's not respectful, to be established, as it's going to be mentioned some of the example. And the evidence of that in the Quran, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. خُذِ الْعَفْوَ, which is the ayah that all the matters of good manners have been mentioned in this one ayah in Surah Al-A'raf, verse number 199. Take what is extra from the people, but the point here, وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ, and command with al-urf. Al-urf is what is known of being good or bad, or halal and haram, what is known from the shara', from the deen. And the second type, what's known among the people to be good, if it's not against the deen, be upon it. And what's known among the people that is disrespectful, even if it's not something that is clearly stated in the deen commanded you to be away from that also. And this is part of perfecting one's manners, especially for those who are upon knowledge and they're seeking knowledge. So he mentioned that to adorn oneself with this muru'ah, and to stay away from what breaks it. He says كَحَلْقِ لِحْيَتِهِ, like shaving his beard, even though this is haram, but it's also against the muru'ah. As he said, Ibn Hajar and others, they mentioned that as from the khawarim of the muru'ah. Or وَكَثْرَةِ الْالْتِفَاتِ فِي الطَّرِيقِ, some simple things like looking so much to one's back when he walks. He's not walking in a respectful way. He keeps on looking to the side or to the back or things like this. And from the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, he would not look back when he walks, unless usually this is the norm. There's an exceptional thing, something he's afraid of something that will come from behind him, or he's watchful of the road. It doesn't mean that you just apply it like this and you harm yourself, but this is the norm. And the Prophet ﷺ, as we heard, when he would speak to someone, he does not move his head to him to speak to him like this. He would turn himself to him to give him that attention. So, and this is again things that can be observed in different places, of course. And some had mentioned that from the times of the early generations of Islam, and he mentioned some of the names that would consider this. مد الرجلين في مجمع الناس من غير حاجة ولا ضرورة داعية. When someone sit and he extend his legs in front of people without a reason or without a necessity, especially for a person of knowledge, unless he needs to, he's in pain, he has a condition, that's a different situation. But to sit in a disrespectful way in a gathering, this is something that breaks the muru'ah of the person. And if someone does this, then people need to have the good expectations and the good thinking of him. He's doing that because he has a condition or something that is bothering him, things of that nature. الصحبة, being in the companionship of al-aradhil wal-fusaq wal-mujjan wal-battalin, the people of fusuk, sinful ones, which is of course haram to be in their companionship, or those who are not respectful, not respected in a community or so, as long as it's valid, of course. And al-battalin, those who are lousy, people that they're not really focused on what's benefiting for them in this life. Don't be in their companionship. It's different than enjoining good, forbidding evil, giving da'wah, advising. That's a different context of things. But to be in the company, that means these are the people that you are with, you go out with, things of that nature. Or even some of the things that you would find in the books, if it's done in a different, depends on the environment or the way that it's looked at. مصارعة الأحداث والصغار, for example, wrestling with the young kids. There's nothing wrong with that, and this is sometimes to be done even from a respectful one. And the Prophet ﷺ, Al-Hasan would ride on top of the Prophet ﷺ in the Salah. So all of these things is to be at ease with. But when a person becomes just too playful, especially in the gatherings of people, if someone at home or someone try to bring some good feelings to a child, this is all perfectly perfect, of course, but sometimes it becomes too far. So to have the balance of this is something that is important, especially for those who are in matters of ilm. However, again, does not respect the issue of al-muru'ah, to pay attention to this, and that also to be developed with ilm and to learn from the people of knowledge. And that's one of the things that people would develop when they are present with the ulama and they go learn from them. And one of the things that people, when they don't study with the ulama, they would come up with all kinds of strange things, thinking that they are appealing to the people, so they end up again humiliating the ilm. People do not respect the ilm because of the actions of disrespect that they would do. These specific things that we mentioned, and inshallah, there's no need for someone to ask, does it mean that we should not play with the kids? That's not what it means, right? You can play as much as you can with your children. Even if it's not your children, you give them all kinds of good gestures and things like this, and you can play with them and wrestle them, in a nice way. All of that is fine. It depends on in the state that a person is in, or imagine someone in the dars like this, and the alims get up from his dars and he wrestle a child. That doesn't look respectful, right? But it doesn't mean for him to be mean or rough or things like this. And that's why even they say, min al-adab, from the manners, tarkul adab fil bustan, for example. If you're in the garden, if you're in the park, from the adab, to stay away from adab. Don't act as if you are in the masjid giving dars of ilm when you are in the park. You're supposed to run, right? People are running, people are swimming. So you don't say, no, this is against the adab and the respect of ilm. No, if you're in the park, act in a normal way, what people would do if they are in the park. And the scholars would go for the students, and they would swim, and the Prophet ﷺ would race with someone, wrestle with someone. But everything has its context, has its place and time, and that's what needs to be for the person aware of. Not to have our life is just a joke and no seriousness in certain things. And this is what needs to be recognized with the subject of al-muru'ah. Some with eating in front of people in the streets and things like this. Number 12, there is related to this انتخاب الصحبة الصالحة له, to choose, to elect, select the right companionship and the right friends for oneself. And this is for every Muslim, and it becomes more important for those who choose to take the path of learning the deen and to be determined and busy with studying the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the issue of the friendship and those who are with you. And he mentioned a statement that Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah, he mentioned, which is a norm for the human beings to understand our reality. فَالْإِنسَانُ مَدَنِيٌّ مُطَّبْعٌ. The human beings are madani by nature. Madani, mudun is the town, civil by nature. That means human beings, they don't by nature like to be isolated. They like to interact, they like to have friends, they like to socialize. So realizing that this is something in our nature, so therefore to find a friend or a companion, that is, it's a necessity, but to make sure that that is according to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what he says, وَاتِّخَاذُ الزَّمِيلِ ضَرُورَةٌ لَازِمَةٌ فِي نُفُوسِ الْخَلْقِ. To have someone that is close to oneself, companion or so, it's a necessity that is in the innates of people. So the student of knowledge, he needs to have this good living with the other students of knowledge. For that good living together, make them help one another to achieve their goal. So if you are upon something that is serious, you need to have your friends upon the same thing, so that they encourage you. And otherwise, if you're not, people would take you away from this path, especially again with something that requires lots of work. Worldly matters is very also clear. If someone is studying something that requires long hours of studying, right? And then your friend is someone that is not studying anything whatsoever, he will put you down. Says, why you waste your time like this? Look at me, I'm working, I'm making lots of money. And he would make you not look ahead of what you're doing and take away the patience from you. And you as a human being, this is in each and every one of us. As we said, الطباع سراقة. These are principles in our life. الطباع, the nature of a person steals from one another. People steal from one another, and you don't feel it, you don't see it, but it's happening. So the ones that you are with all the time, they would steal things from you, you would steal things from them. That is not necessarily physical. It's the manners, it's what's in the hearts. The hearts get affected in a way that we don't see it. So that's why be with the one that you would like to be like, or the one that would help you in this mission that you're embarking or so, like one of which, especially again, the matters that requires determinations and patience. And if you let yourself loose, you would slip away, because everything around you is taking you away from it. You're not encouraged. You're not like the norm. Everybody's competing to study the deen. You know, you would find yourself the minority and the minority of the minority. And people would make fun of you, ridicule you. Or if they praise you, but they say, you know, it's too much. It's too. So that's why it's very important to make sure that you have those who have the same determination. And if you don't find, then prepare yourself to be alone. It's okay. But don't ruin yourself. Don't say, I have to have friends, so I'm a student of knowledge, and then at night I go out with the lousy ones. You'll be lousy like them. It's not the other way around. And don't think that you're stronger. No, you'll be weak. So, and that's why those who seek what's higher levels of things, they have to seek also the same way. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, الرجل على دين خليله فلينظر أحدكم من يخالل. The man is upon the religion of his Khalil, the most intimate, the closest friend. So the command here as a duty, look which one is your friend and which one is close to you. Al-Raghib al-Asfahani, he said, and he quoted from him, it's a reality also. ليس إعداء الجليس لجليسه بمقاله وفعاله فقط بل بالنظر إليه. The إعداء, like when you get a disease going from one person to the other, all by the will of Allah, right? So when you get affected by someone, and this is a disease, if you're sitting with someone, he would affect you in a negative way, not by what he says and not by what he do only. We think that, okay, if I'm sitting with someone, he's have some issues, but he doesn't say anything bad and he doesn't do anything bad while I'm with him. Again, if you're giving da'wah advice, it's an exceptional situation, but this is your friend. What happens? You're also going to be affected by looking at him. Just the fact that you're looking at him, that affects you. So there are things that affects the heart. Just the fact that you're seeing someone that not really know what he's doing in his life. He's just aimless in his life. The constant acquaintance of something like this will affect your heart. So the ulama, they mention this as they say in the line of poetry, لا تصحب الكسلان في حالاته كم صالح بفساد آخر يفسد. Do not be friends with someone that is lazy in whatever states that he's in. How many people that are upright, but with the corruption of others, they become corrupted. عدوى البليد إلى الجليد سريعة كالجمر يوضع في الرماد فيخمد. The balid is the one that is lazy. He doesn't think in the right way. So it's like when you have something that get affected quickly. So again, the point here is to be away from anything that would affect a person when it comes to the suhbah or the relationship or the friendship and things like this. We talked about this before, and he mentioned it here again, that the types of friends are different. There are different types of friends. There is the sadiq ladha, sadiq manfa'a, ladha, fadila. If you remember, the same three words were mentioned before. And it's good to know the classification of things. A friend that is there for the ladha, for the enjoyment. Someone that is your friend or you are his friend because of the fun time that you spend with one another. You do things that are fun. And the second one is sadiq manfa'a. He's your friend because of benefit. You benefit him with something, he benefits you with something. So that's why you're friends. And the third one, the sadiq of al-fadila, the sadiq of virtue. You're his friend for the sake of Allah, for the virtue of things, for the rewards and things like this. The first two, the friendship will end when whatever that thing ends. So if there's no enjoyment anymore, it's not there anymore. Or the benefit, and they're not really someone that you can really take as a friend, but rather the one that is for the sake of Allah, the one that is doing things for the sake of Allah for matters of righteousness. And many statements that even you might be present with someone that is not upon what is upright in the presence of a alim, and you get deprived from some of the benefits that the alim would give you. Why? Because, for example, sometimes the person of knowledge would not say everything in front of everybody, meaning there's no secrets in the deen, but someone is not ready yet for a part of knowledge, for example. So if he has to recognize this. So he mentioned an example of that. So this is the issue of the companionship. And then number 13, to put the effort as بذل الجهد في تحفظ العلم والمذاكرة به والسؤال عنه. To put the effort and the struggle in learning the knowledge, studying it, and to ask about it. So the things that we talked about with the manners and the adab of learning. So learning the deen from the mashayikh, from the people of knowledge, which is a must. But as he says, it does not benefit unless you memorize it. So you write it down, you memorize it, you study it. Otherwise, it disappears, it goes away. Yes, of course, there's benefit, but are you going into the path of being a student of knowledge, to be a person of knowledge, or are you just there for the rewards and the benefits? MashaAllah, there's always goodness in anything. And it's not to belittle someone that wants to benefit in the gatherings of knowledge and the people of knowledge. There's always benefit. But it's, again, for those who wants to take the way of the people of knowledge, to be among the people of knowledge. That can never be attained unless a person memorizes, studies, records, asks, like this, and to learn the etiquettes of each one, how to memorize and when, how to understand and how to do it, and how to study, and also how to ask and when to ask and what to say when you ask. And we talked about that, of some of the etiquettes and what to stay away from asking. Asking is knowledge in itself. And that's why we learn so much ilm from the questioning of the Sahaba to the Prophet ﷺ. Amazing way of asking questions, that lots of ilm comes out from the Prophet ﷺ as a result of this precise and wise way of asking. So this is also ilm. So it needs to be present in the heart of the student of knowledge, of putting the effort to learn and to memorize and to ask, and how to be upon the adab in this. So when it comes to memorization, as he says, فَبِالْحِفْظِ يُقَرَّرُ الْعِلْمُ فِي الْقَلْبِ. Memorizing things, it establishes the knowledge in the heart. And that's why you have to make sure that you're upon this. People belittle memorization. They think, well, everything is in the book. I'm just adding another version of the book. No, you're not adding another version to the book. You're inserting the ilm in your heart. So it requires memorization and understanding. If you understand something, first you need to understand what is being said, or a mas'ala or so, and then you memorize what you are commanded to memorize. And memorization is a talent, is a muscle, if it's correct to say. It's a way to strengthen your heart with it. And that requires the consistency and to keep on memorizing and reviewing. And it does not befit, or does not even, cannot perceive a person of knowledge or a student of knowledge that on a daily basis he has to memorize and he has to review. Not just the Quran. Quran is to have to be memorized. If it's not memorized every day, it has to be reviewed whatever you memorized. If you memorized it, then you have to review it every day. The same thing with any matters of knowledge. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the mutun that the ulama would say, memorize this. Then you understand it, and you know how to read it well, and you memorize it. And the more you memorize, the more the ilm is inserted and established. And we should not seek excuses from ourselves. I can't memorize, it's difficult for me. A person, even with memorizing so much less according to his capacity, is better than not memorizing whatsoever. And that's why even he mentioned a statement even from Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah. He said, حفظنا قليلا وقرأنا كثيرا فانتفعنا بما حفظنا أكثر من انتفاعنا بما قرأنا. And this is someone that is contemporary in our lifetime that we have. He says, rahimahullah, we memorized little and we read a lot. And that's humbleness from the Sheikh. But compared to the early generations of Islam, you can see that as a reality. So we memorized less, but we read a lot. So this after long journey of ilm and being old age with the ilm and day and night, he said, so we benefited from what we memorized far more than what we benefited from what we read. So never belittle the things that you memorize, even when you're young and so on. Because the ilm is the mutun, or the entry levels of things, if it's correct to say. If you memorize it and you expand on it, it always goes back to these foundations. So the memorization is such an important thing, of course. And that's why it's a way to establish it in the heart. So the etiquettes of that and the way to do so. And as he mentioned here, Ibn al-Furat, he used to do something, and this is just an example to get ourselves the encouragements. فقد كان لا يترك كل يوم إذا أصبح أن يحفظ شيئا وإن قل. He would make sure upon himself, every day he wakes up in the morning, he has to memorize something, even if it's something small. So whatever it is, make it a habit in yourself, that every day. Because why? When you wake up in the morning, because your mind is not distracted yet. And that's one of the best times for a person to memorize, is when there's no distractions and the person is not busy much. So even if it's one sentence, even if it's something very short, but to get the habit of memorizing something on a daily basis. And that's why he says, وَمَنْ عَقَلَ هَذَا الْمَعْنَى لَمْ يَزَلْ مِنَ الْحِفْظِ فِي ازْدِيَادٍ. Whoever understands this meaning very well, he will constantly increase his memorization, and he will continue to be like this till he dies. And he even mentioned that Ibn Malik, Sahib al-Alfiyya al-Nahwiyya, he memorized the day that he died 5 shawahid, 5 lines of poetry with the evidence of matters of Nahu, the day that he died. So constant memorization, and it's all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is with hifz. With studying, the life of the knowledge will continue to be present when a person is studying it, and his heart will be more attached to it. And al-mudhakara, whether it's for a person to study and to also present this to one another when people are studying together. And we are been commanded to make ta'ahud al-Quran, as the Prophet ﷺ said, to ta'ahud al-Quran. That means keep on reviewing the Quran, keep on memorizing and reviewing the Quran. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Quran. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهِمْ مُدَّكِرٍ. We made the Quran easy for people. So imagine, other than the Quran, what needs to be done to it. And as the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, إِنَّمَا مَثَلُ صَاحِبِ الْقُرْآنِ كَمَثَلِ صَاحِبِ الْإِبِلِ الْمُعَقَّلَةِ. The example, the like of the person of the Quran is like the one that has a camel. إِنْ عَاهَدَ عَلَيْهَا أَمْسَكَهَا. If he keeps on paying attention to it, he will hold it. Otherwise, it goes away, doesn't come back. So the same thing with the Quran. So as Ibn Abd al-Barr, he said, وَإِذَا كَانَ الْقُرْآنُ الْمُيَسَّرُ لِلذِّكْرِ كَالْإِبِلِ الْمُعَقَّلَةِ مَنْ تَعَاهَدَهَا أَمْسَكَهَا فَكَيْفَ بِسَائِرِ الْعُلُومِ. How is it done with the rest of matters of knowledge? So Imam Zuhri also used to say, إِنَّمَا يُذْهِبُ الْعِلْمَ النِّسْيَانِ وَتَرْكُ الْمُذَاكَرَةِ. What takes away the ilm, of course, not acting upon it. As we heard yesterday, the ilm would just leave if a person does not act upon the knowledge that he learns. And also the ilm goes away with forgetting and not studying it. So memorizing and studying, and sometimes the memorization comes before even understanding, especially if a person is young. So if you have the ability to memorize, don't say I'll understand it first. Usually memorization requires certain abilities, focus, the feel of that you want to memorize. Don't stop yourself. And the more you get older, right, you don't have too much options. So when you find yourself have the ability to memorize, just grab anything and memorize, of course, in the proper way. But make sure that you don't skip the memorization. And don't say, I don't understand what I'm memorizing. It's okay, memorize it. And then have another time to understand it and listen and ask, because it's not always feasible and available for the person to memorize. And studying, of course, is a must. And then, وَبِالسُّؤَالِ عَنِ الْعِلْمِ تُفْتَتَحُ خَزَائِنُ. Asking with matters of ilm, you open the treasures of the ilm. So the ilm, again, it's all about ta'zimul ilm. When you're exalting the ilm, you look at the ilm as treasures. This is the treasure that you have in your life. And that's why there's no one more happier on the face of earth than the people of knowledge, because they're living in the most richest thing in the world, which is the ilm. They look into that ilm as treasures. Imagine someone have treasures of gold and silver and things like this, and you think that he's so happy with it. What's more happier than that is the people of knowledge, because of these treasures, that the fa'idah or the benefit that they learn of something is more joyful to them than the treasures of this earth, because this stays forever. So, and that's the benefit of the ilm and the barakah of it. Imam al-Zuhri rahimahullah, he said, إِنَّمَا هَذَا الْعِلْمُ خَزَائِنُ. This ilm is treasures. وَتَفْتَتِحُهَا الْمَسْأَلَةِ. And the mas'ala asking open the treasures for the ilm. So, but then the good way of asking is half of the knowledge. So it's not just asking, and then you can lose so much by not knowing how to ask and what to ask and when to ask. So that's why حُسْنُ الْمَسْأَلَةِ نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ. Half of the knowledge is to have the good way of asking. And many even books have been compiled based on questions, like Masail, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, and those who would ask him questions, and the same thing with Imam Malik, questions, and it becomes a source of knowledge that the ummah benefit from it. And if people do not ask and they don't learn how to ask, which is an important subject here, it affects the ilm in the town that they're in. The ilm disappears if people are not asking. Then, as he mentioned here, a very interesting thing about Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, when he went to Asqalan and he stayed there for 3 days, nobody asked him anything. So he said to one of his companions, اكتري لي أخرج من هذا البلد، هذا بلد يموت فيه العلم. Find something for me. He wanted to leave. This is a town, a place or a town that the knowledge dies in it. People are not asking. So how can they live their life without asking? But at the same time, asking can be a burdensome for the one that asks and the people of knowledge when they're asked. So it's not about just asking. So nobody would hear this, okay, let me ask. Every day I have to ask something. And then it's stories and making up things and of no benefit and not having the adab of asking. So, and especially, say for example, you're traveling and you're going to meet or come across some of the major ulama. And if you have the means to be with them, you have to kind of with the ilm, also a person would develop this. He would make sure that he asks the most or the questions that no one else would give him benefit, like that person that he's going to meet, right? So you're not asking to test him, right? You're not asking to put him on the spot. You're asking for your own benefit, and especially that something that you can benefit from the great scholars in a way that also with the adab of it, if a person has the means to do so. So the issue of the question, inshallah ta'ala, with time, we should also learn how to make sure that we ask in the proper way. And we talked about it in some, in a brief way, inshallah ta'ala. So this is with the three things, the memorization and studying. And that's how, see, the questioning came after, at the end, to make sure that it's not the way that a person learns, rather it comes with the process of learning to make sure that everything is clear. One last point, inshallah ta'ala, which is number 14, is to respect the people of knowledge and to honor them. And as mentioned before, also, this is a common thing that has been mentioned. It's not for the individuals. It's not for the, as we said, the individual or the person of knowledge. He wants to be respected because he deserves to be respected, or because of his own personal gain. It's because of the deen. It's about the deen of Allah. The more the person has tajarrud, the more the person is sincere, the more that he doesn't care about anything except the deen of Allah. He doesn't care about himself, but he cares about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one of which is the deen to be respected and the ilm to be respected. And this is how the ilm, where's the ilm? The ilm is not in the air. It's not on a tree somewhere. The ilm is in the hearts of the people of knowledge. So when we are respecting the ilm, this is how we respect the ilm, by respecting the ulama. So not because of the physical being, but rather for the ilm that they carry. And he mentioned this concept of al-alim. Why is that? لأنهم آباء الروح. This is they are our fathers when it comes to our souls and our spiritual being and things like this. So فالشيخ أب للروح كما أن الوالد أب للجسد. As your father is your physical, your biological father, the sheikh is your father spiritually. And in the qira'ah of Ubay ibn Ka'b, النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم وهو أب لهم. And he is father to them. And this fatherhood, if it's correct, this thing is a fatherhood. The being a father is not the physical father, because it's haram to attribute yourself. ادعوهم لآبائهم وأقسطوا عند الله. It's haram for someone to say, my father is such and such, when he's not your father. And it doesn't have to be your immediate father, your grandfather, your seventh grandfather. It's haram. This is a major sin, to attribute oneself to a wrong person or something like this. But what is meant by this is the ubuwa, or the fatherhood of the deen, or the fatherhood of one's spiritual one. Not like those who are extremes, those who would worship other than Allah, right? Like the deviant ones. But this is when it comes to the ilm for us to follow. So فالاعتراف بفضل المعلمين حق واجب. So to acknowledge the virtue and the right of our teachers is an obligatory right to be observed. Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, he said, كل من سمعت منه حديثا فأنا له عبد. Everyone that I heard from him hadith, I am a slave to him. And from what we heard before, even though the more we continue to hear things, the more we will understand things in the right way, inshallah. No one is to come and take this literally, right? And say, what is this? I'm a slave. We have to, inshallah, being smart to understand what the ulama they mean. It does not mean that he's going to be a slave in the literal sense. That means he is humble to him, he is obedient to him, not in sins, not in a way that is against the deen of Allah, but this is the form or the way of respect and goodness that they have towards them. And he mentioned even the ayah in the Quran, قال موسى لفتاه, which is Yusha ibn Nun, and he was not a slave to him, but he was someone that is seeking knowledge from him, following him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him fatah, his boy. He honored him just because of this relationship. So as the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Muslim Imam Ahmad, this is part of the deen. ليس من أمتي من لم يجل كبيرنا ويرحم صغيرنا ويعرف لعالمنا حقه. He is not from my ummah. Distancing, detaching himself, he's not from our ummah, the one that does not yujil kabirana. Al-ijlal is to something to do like the ta'zim, the one that does not exalt and respect our elders. So respecting the elders, this is from being a Muslim. You're not from this ummah if you don't respect your elders. وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرَنَا, and those who would have mercy towards the young, towards those who are young. وَيَعْرِفْ لِعَالِمِنَا حَقًّا, and he knows for our alim, for our scholar, the person of knowledge, his rights. And that's what the author that we mentioned before, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and he's the cousin of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, from Ahlul Bayt, someone to be respected and honored as a religion. But he was younger than other Sahaba, companions, in which he would go seek knowledge from them, like Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu. He would go to him and he would hold the rein of the horse or the camel of Zayd ibn Thabit, and he, Abdullah ibn Abbas, is the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Zayd would say to him, "Atumsiku li wa anta ibn ammi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Don't do that. How can you do this? And you are the cousin of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. And this is the older one is saying that to the younger one because of the respect and the honor they have to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. So Abdullah ibn Abbas, he would say, "Inna hakadha nasna'u bil ulama." This is how we deal with the ulama. So Ibn Abbas, he would say that this is innaha kadha. That means this is our norm. This is how we respect our ulama. And this is consensus again among the ummah to respect the ulama. And he says, وَالْبَصِيرُ بِالْأَحْوَالِ السَّلَفِيَّةِ يَقِفُ عَلَى حَمِيدِ أَحْوَالِهِمْ فِي تَوْقِيرِ عُلَمَائِهِمْ. Those who look at the way of a salaf al-salih, you would see that clearly. You won't be confused in this subject whatsoever of how they respected and they treated their ulama. And one of the bad signs for the ummah, when the ulama are not being respected. Even we're living at times where the ulama are being even cursed sometimes from among some people, and it becomes the good way of speaking to another and backbiting the ulama and things of that nature. And as just a side benefit here is there is no ummah that was successful if its prophets died when he was not pleased with them. The prophets. If the prophet dies and he's angry with his people, this ummah can never be successful, like Musa alayhi salam and the like of the prophets of Bani Israel. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when he died when he was pleased with his companions radiallahu anhum, so they were successful. The ulama, they take this from a benefit from it, right? That the same thing when it comes to the people with their ulama. If their ulama are angry with them, meaning, and the alim supposed to do this for the sake of Allah, that means there's no goodness in them. And this is not, again, this is no holiness in this or anything of that nature, but it's something to pay attention to. And that's why we need to respect the people of knowledge and to follow them and to respect them. And how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum used to sit whenever the Prophet ﷺ would teach them or with him, the ulama, they take that also to be followed with the people of knowledge, because the ulama warathatul anbiya, the people of knowledge are the inheritors of the prophets. And the same thing with whatever the Prophet ﷺ was upon something. If he's imam in the salah, then the imam is to be acting like the Prophet ﷺ. We don't say that that's only for the Prophet ﷺ. That's for every imam if he leads the salah. If he, for example, line up the people in the salah, that means we should not say, well, you're not the Prophet ﷺ. Who are you to line me up in the salah? No, this is the imitating and following the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So the same thing when it comes to the ulama versus the people. One last point, but this point didn't finish yet, and we should go through it inshallah ta'ala tonight inshallah, continuing. As he mentioned here, many of the narrations, Imam Malik and others, in which they would see how the people treat him and how they act, and the hayba, the respect in the gatherings. And if someone raises their voice, they would discipline such a person. All of that is not to negate the humbleness and to be kind to one another. It's the respect that a person should observe to matters of him. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue later. Wa sallallahu sallam wa barak ala Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. There are some questions here. There was one question from last night about being said that not to study the Quran and Hadith on one's own, on your own. What exactly does this mean? Does it mean to not study without a teacher, or does it mean not to interpreting things in your own way? Following up with this, what is the opinion about using websites which are dedicated to tafsir of Quran to understand and study the Quran? As mentioned, is that we have to differentiate between two things. Someone is studying the deen to be a person specialized in studying the deen to be among the people of knowledge, versus a common Muslim that wants to learn his deen. The common Muslim that wants to learn his deen, he would listen to the Quran and Hadith from the ulama. So the ulama are the ones that will explain to him the Quran and the Hadith. And this ayah means this, the Hadith means this. Or someone would give them or narrate to them what the ulama said in the proper understanding. So as long as the person understands what the ulama say. So no common Muslim or someone that is not upon knowledge is to delve directly to the Quran and the Hadith and he explain it from his own self. I think this is what it means like this, or this is what it like this. You have to learn it to explain it, or to narrate what the ulama said about it. If someone, the other case is if someone studying matters of deen, the same thing. You don't start studying the Quran and the Hadith linguistically and then you become a alim. Yeah, that's why you have to study the different ulum, the different sciences that is supposed to be there for a person to understand the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, whether it's linguistics or the ulum al-Quran, ulum al-Hadith, and the tafsir and the different aspects of this. So this is what is meant by that. That means with the teacher or someone or the alim will teach you what the Quran and the Hadith means. And when it comes to websites and things of that nature, we have to be careful. إن هذا العلم دين فانظروا عمن تأخذون دينكم, as Ibn Sirin said, this ilm is religion, so see where you're taking your religion from. So if something about the tafsir of the Quran, take it from the one that learned the Quran, yes, and you act upon it, yes, if it's a person of knowledge, but does not make a person of knowledge, unless you just saying the alim said. Quickly, inshallah, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't have a friend except a believer, and don't let him eat your food except one with taqwa. Then there's the hadith of Salam, Abdullah ibn Salam, where he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, feed the people. Can you please explain? Now, there's two hadith here. One is that we mentioned earlier before, which is as mentioned here, لا تصاحب إلا مؤمنا ولا يأكل طعامك إلا تقي. Do not be friends except with a mu'min, and do not let anyone eat your food except a taqi. And we know that the hadith, that the virtue of feeding, وَطْعِمُ الطَّعَامِ, feed people and so on. What is meant by this hadith, وَلَا يَأْكُلْ طَعَامَكَ إِلَّا تَقِي, as the ulama, they explain it, this is your acquaintance. It refers to those who are close to you, your friends that would be eating your food and you eating their food. This is the taqi. But other than them, then there's a reason for it. You're giving food to your neighbors, you're inviting your neighbors, even if they're disbelievers, you're making an intentions of da'wah, you're feeding people for a reason. But those who you see day and night, and they are your friends and things like this is what is meant as the ulama, they say. Allahu a'lam. Is there a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said that you have three fathers, one your biological, second who gives you his daughter, and third your teacher? I do not recall something like this as a hadith. I don't know. لا أدري. الله أعلم. What is the ruling on having non-Muslim friends with the intention of doing da'wah and educating them about Islam? As we said, what we talked about is the norm. Exceptional situations, we should consult with the people of knowledge, and giving da'wah you don't have to be friends with the one that you give da'wah to. Friends meaning a suhbah, that day and night your secrets are with them, you hang out with them like this, you'll be affected. So that's different than giving da'wah to someone and being kind to someone, but without being affected in a negative way. And when you're giving da'wah, you have to make sure that you also protect yourself with ilm, with knowledge, with the people of knowledge, with the right environment, because da'wah, or not da'wah, but the way that people can conduct themselves in da'wah can be fitna for them. And many people, they start with good intentions of giving da'wah, they end up being then receiving da'wah from others and compromising the deen and things like this, if a person having weak iman or so on. Wallahu a'lam. Anything else? Barakallahu feekum. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا بحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.